Okay, so picture this. JFK sailing, Hyannis Court, those classic
Hmm.
photos. Or Grace Kelly looking, I don't know, effortlessly chic, just in a simple button-down shirt. Well, guess what? That's basically the heart of what we're going to be diving into today. It's preppy clothing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, when they hear that, they think Ivy League, right? Like that's the image. But the truth
Yeah.
is, there's a lot more to the story of Preppy than you might think. It's tied up with all sorts of things in American history and culture, even ideas about like class and identity.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what's funny? It all begins in a place you wouldn't expect at all. Like early 1800s, New York City, the docks.
You got it. Now you're probably thinking, what on earth do dock workers have to do with like the whole preppy look? Well, it all goes back to a guy named Henry Sands Brooks. Smart guy, right? After the War of 1812, there was all this British fabric, surplus stuff just dumped on American shores.
Okay, so what did he do?
Well, he saw an opportunity. He started selling ready-made clothes.
Ready-made. That doesn't sound like groundbreaking to us now, but I bet back then.
Oh, it was huge. Back then, everyone had their clothes custom made by tailors. His company, Brooks Brothers, it totally changed the game, offered affordable suits right off the rack to anybody. And that, honestly, that had some pretty big effects on American society.
So it's like Brooks Brothers, they kind of democratized fashion.
Yeah.
People who never could have dressed like the wealthy, suddenly they could.
Exactly. It was like this, well, Benjamin Franklin called it a happy mediocrity. That's a good way to put it. So preppy, like in its very earliest form, it was actually a symbol of American egalitarianism, if you think about it.
Wow, happy mediocrity. I like that. I like that a lot. But, okay, how do we get from suits, just regular suits, to what we think of as preppy now? Like, what happened?
We gotta move, right? We're leaving the docks behind. Now we're headed to, well, think Ivy League. Princeton, specifically. 1930s. You've got these eating clubs, exclusive. And that's where this sense of collegiate style starts brewing. That's where preppy, as we kind of know it, that's where it comes from.
Gotcha. So we're talking like the classic Ivy League look. Oxford shirts, the button-downs,
Yeah.
right? Maybe tweed jackets. Those loafers, the penny loafers.
You know it. It was a formal but also young, sporty,
Right.
way to kind of rebel against how their parents dress, that old stuffy thing.
Okay, so tweed jackets and loafers are rebellion. I kind of love that. But honestly, it was still pretty limited to a certain crowd.
Yeah.
How did preppy actually break out of those Ivy League walls, like get to be more mainstream?
Two things, really. The GI Bill, and then this might surprise you, cool jazz. So after World War II, tons of veterans, they're going to college, thanks to the GI Bill, right? And what are they wearing? Khakis. Military issued. Practical. Comfy. They became like a staple of the preppy wardrobe.
Whoa, wait, so even war, in a way, it shaped preppy style.
Mm.
That's wild. I mean, it's amazing how all this stuff connects.
Mm.
The fabric, the ready-made clothes, the GI Bill. It's like a fashion history lesson in itself.
Yeah.
But hold on, you mentioned jazz music. How does that fit in?
That's where things get really cool, literally. We're talking 1950s now. You've got black jazz musicians, Miles Davis, John Coltrane, guys like that. They start wearing that Ivy League look, but it's different, right? They give it this whole new vibe. It's sharp, it's sophisticated, and it just oozes cool.
So it's not just waspy college kids anymore. It's black artists shaping the music scene, and they're adopting preppy, making it their own.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty awesome how fashion can do that, bridge those gaps. But hold on, the 1960s hit. Counterculture, right?
Yeah.
Tie-dye, bell-bottoms, the whole deal. Did preppy just disappear then? So before we got sidetracked there, we were talking about the 60s, right? All that counterculture stuff
Yeah.
really shook things up fashion-wise. Did preppy just vanish? With all the like tie-dye and, I don't know, bell-bottoms everywhere?
Well, not exactly. It definitely wasn't the star of the show anymore. The Peacock Revolution, all those crazy trends. Preppy was more, I guess you'd say, in the background. But the thing is, those classic elements, they never really went away completely. And right in the middle of all that, there was this young designer, Ralph Lauren. He saw a chance to kind of reinvent preppy, introduce it to a whole new generation.
Ralph Lauren. I mean, the guy built an empire, right? On this idea of, I don't know, aspirational living. And a big part of that was the clothes. So what was his take on preppy? How did he see it?
Okay, so he recognized something. He saw that the classic silhouettes, the quality, the craftsmanship that goes into preppy clothes, that stuff had staying power. It appealed to people. But you wanted to update it, give it a modern feel, more sophisticated, maybe a little edgier. So he took that Ivy League look and he mixed it with, well, a touch of Hollywood glamour, you could say.
So the same basic pieces, like the Oxford shirts, those cable knit sweaters, but they felt more luxurious, like something out of a movie.
Exactly. And it went beyond the clothes themselves. Lauren was brilliant at branding. He created a whole world around his version of preppy. You know, country estates, polo matches, that whole vibe of effortless elegance. And his ads, they were iconic. All those soft focus shots, dreamy lighting. He wasn't just selling you a shirt, he was selling a lifestyle.
That's so true. It's like people don't just want to wear clothes, right?
Yeah.
They want to wear a feeling,
Yeah.
an idea. But I'm curious, at this point, was preppy still seen as this exclusive thing for like the wealthy, the well-connected, or had that changed?
Well, that perception, it was about to change big time. And the catalyst was, well, you might not believe this, a book. But not just any book. It was called the Official Preppy Handbook, came out in 1980.
Oh, I remember that. It was everywhere. Wasn't it supposed to be satirical, though?
Yeah.
Like making fun of preppy culture?
Yeah. Lisa Bernbach, the author, she totally meant it as a joke. A funny look at all the preppy quirks, right? Like what brands they wore, their weird hobbies, all that. But then, well, the funniest thing happened. The book became a massive bestseller. Over 1 million copies, easy.
So it was like a guidebook to a secret society. But then suddenly, everyone was in on the secret.
Mm.
I gotta ask, did this, like, explosion of preppy into the mainstream, did that line up with anything else that was going on culturally?
Totally. Think about the 1980s. Reagan gets elected. You've got Reaganomics, this whole emphasis on like wealth, ambition, material success, and preppy style with all those connotations of, old money, achievement. It fit right in perfectly.
It was the era of dress for success, wasn't it? Power suits, shoulder pads, that whole thing. So preppy got more corporate, more professional.
You got it. Women, they were entering the workforce in huge numbers, and preppy clothes became this way to project like competence, authority. It was the uniform for the ambitious, the ones climbing the ladder. But it wasn't just women. Men were dealing with this shift too, right? Business casual starts to emerge.
And who better to represent that than Bill Gates? Tech genius in his khakis and polo shirts.
Talk about a change, right? From the suit and tie, the old school corporate look, it was like a sign of the times. Silicon Valley, they're challenging Wall Street, not just in tech, but in how they dress too. So yeah, preppy had come a long way. From Ivy League campuses to the corporate world. Reinvented by Ralph Lauren, embraced by, well, everyone, practically. But was there any pushback? Did anyone try to, steer things in a different direction, especially for women? Oh, there totally was. Mid-'80s, you get this trend called frou-frou fashion. Think mini skirts, ruffles, super feminine, almost over the top. It was maybe an attempt to bring back those traditional gender roles and how people dress, but it flopped big time.
So women were basically saying, no thanks, we'll choose our own style, comfort, control, that's what they wanted.
Exactly. They weren't going to be told what femininity was supposed to look like. And that rejection of frou-frou, it was a turning point. Brands realized they couldn't just dictate trends anymore. They had to actually listen to what people wanted. That's when you see trend forecasting starting to take off. Companies trying to figure out, okay, what are people actually going to buy? What do they like?
It's amazing, right, how all these things connect. Culture, economics, fashion, they all influence each other. But we've been talking about, the mainstream side of preppy. What about the streets? Was there a subculture that took preppy and, I don't know, made it something totally different?
That is such a great question, and honestly, that's where we're headed next. We're going to Brooklyn, the 90s, and we're going to see how preppy got a whole new makeover. You won't believe it.
Okay, so we've gone through a lot, right? We started with, those early days of preppy, surplus fabric on the docks, and then the Ivy League thing, Ralph Lauren's whole vibe, even the corporate world getting in on it, that handbook. But like you just said, there's this whole other side to the story. 1990s Brooklyn, a new generation.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? Because while all that mainstream preppy stuff was happening, there was this whole other energy brewing on the streets. It's the 90s, Brooklyn, this melting pot of cultures and styles, and the kids there, they were creating their own version of cool.
Totally. And for them, preppy, it meant something different, didn't it? It wasn't just about, privilege or whatever. It was more about self-expression.
Yeah.
Playing with those ideas of class, status, turning it on its head.
Exactly. And, they had this incredible style. They take those classic preppy pieces, the polos, the rugby shirts, the khakis, all that, but they'd, remix it, give it this street edge.
So we're talking, oversized Tommy Hilfiger shirts with baggy jeans.
Right.
Ralph Lauren sweaters with hoodies.
You got it. It was high and low, all mixed up, embracing preppy, but also, subverting it at the same time.
And speaking of Tommy Hilfiger, man, he was smart. He saw what was happening and he just went with it, right? Collaborated with hip-hop artist, put him in his ads, the whole thing.
Yeah, he did. And there's this one moment, I mean, everyone remembers it. Snoop Dogg on Saturday Night Live, 1994. He walks out on stage wearing this huge Tawny Hilfiger rugby shirt, and that was it. It was a moment.
Oh, yeah. It wasn't even just about the clothes. It was like a statement
Hmm.
about culture, about like who gets to wear what, breaking down those barriers between street style and preppy.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just happening in Brooklyn either. It was this whole global thing. But here's another twist. While all that was going down in America, something else was happening with Preppy over in Japan.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Preppy goes to Japan.
Yeah. So you had the American brands like Tommy going for that bold, oversized look. But in Japan, brands like Uniqlo, they were focusing on the basics. They took those classic preppy pieces, the Oxfords, khakis, sweaters, and they just like perfected them. The tailoring was amazing, the fabrics, the minimalist designs. It was a whole different vibe.
It's like Preppy went on this round trip, right? Started in America, traveled the world, got reinterpreted, and then came back refined and, well, I don't know, kind of elevated maybe through that Japanese lens.
Yeah. And now here we are, preppy, it's everywhere. It's so ingrained in fashion that it's almost like invisible. You don't even think about it.
So after all this, all the changes, the reinventions, what's the legacy of Preppy, you think?
That's the question, right? It went from this marker of being elite, something everyone could wear. It got like democratized, mixed up with other styles. It went global. I mean, presidents have worn preppy. Protesters, rappers, rock stars, everybody.
So maybe Preppy has become like this blank canvas, a style that anyone can adapt, make their own, express themselves.
I think that's it. It's the adaptability, the ability to go beyond trends. That's what makes preppy so powerful. And that's what's so cool about fashion, right? It's always changing, reflecting like who we are, what we care about. It's a mirror in a way. And who knows what's next for preppy. But hey, we'll be here to dive into it, whatever it is.
It's been a wild ride for sure, from those docks in New York to, well, everywhere practically. I never realized how much history, how much meaning was packed into preppy clothes.
It goes to show you fashion, it's not just about what you wear, it's about like identity, expression, the stories we tell through our clothes. And there are so many stories still waiting to be told.